Have you detected have you noticed that insecurity increasing since Labor came in?
I think there's always insecurity. You know, I would describe it as the pendulum swings. So, you know, you've got a legislative agenda, the pendulum swings, a new government's in place, everyone expects that, that's fine. I think there is uncertainty, though, when, you know, we start to bring up issues like franking credit rebates, what's the impact of that going to be, caps on superannuation, and certainly, like, in terms of the voices that get prominence, like, I'm not sure if you've seen the recent Grattan Institute's report on superannuation, but some of the reforms that they're recommending are radical and I think would be in very bad faith to what has been, I guess, promised or offered to retirees in the superannuation system environment. I mean, they're talking about slapping a 15% tax back on the assets in the pension phase, which are currently tax-free. And anyway, so I think there's probably more uncertainty around the voices that are getting prominence and coming through in some of the reform agenda. And definitely, I think that the $3 million super cap, it won't affect a huge amount of people, but for those that it does, it creates an incredible amount of administrative burden, and that's yet to be worked out to see how they're actually going to implement it.
Well, I think in places like the Grattan Institute and in the government, they seem to forget that this is actually other people's money. I mean...
Exactly. And I think, you know, on that topic of values, you know, coming through in the reform agenda, like that's, you know, the sides that they're firmly on superannuation, it feels like, in terms of, you know, forcing super funds or incentivising super funds. He talks a lot in his essay around co-investment and cooperation, and, you know, particularly in terms of the transition to renewable energy. And I think the key thing there is, you know, the market's not supporting it because it's not sustainable, it's not profitable. I mean, that's the end of the thing. And you know, impact investment is there as a niche part of the market for people to be able to, you know, partner with more profit motive driven investors and get social outcomes, and that's fantastic. But I think the degree of it's all intention, and I think you can definitely over egg.
It's all about it's all about the feels. How do you think this will pan out, PJ? Do you think Chalmers will be able to stitch his values into you know, his policies as Treasurer? And do you think we'll see a central bank digital currency?
Oh, good question. Look, I think the values piece, I think it will. It's getting a run at the moment. I think they've been consistent in their application of it. I think it suits the government's reform agenda in terms of, even if it's not, in my view, consistent, with some of their spending decisions and areas, how they actually run the budget. And look, I think in terms of a digital currency, I think the globe, and, you know, this is another issue of, like, you know, what choice do we have? But I think as a world, we are moving more and more into digital spaces, digital environments. I think increasingly legislation around cash holdings, mandatory reporting, anti-money laundering, that type of thing, is making cash very difficult to use. And I think then once it's digitized, it's tracked, it's processed, and it becomes vulnerable to, like, highly centralized surveillance. And so, look, I think the fears in that space are warranted, particularly given where our social discourse is going at the moment and kind of the fringe voices that get to participate in decision making. And probably, I would say it's a matter of time.